Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that something the world ignored for decades has suddenly become one of the most important resources on the planet. Not oil, not gold, something quieter, cheaper, underestimated. Silver. Most people think of silver as jewelry or coins, something old-fashioned, something that sits in a vault or a drawer. But what if the real story hasn't even begun yet? What if the metal people overlooked is actually sitting at the center of the next technological revolution? Right now, the world is racing toward electric vehicles, solar power, artificial intelligence, robotics, and space exploration. All of these things sound futuristic, but they rely on something very physical, very real, something pulled out of the earth. And silver happens to be one of the most critical materials for that future. The strange thing is that the world is acting like supply will always be there, like the laws of physics and mining somehow don't apply. But reality doesn't care about assumptions. When demand explodes and supply can't keep up, markets move, sometimes slowly, sometimes violently. The unthinkable moment is when everyone suddenly realizes the same thing at the same time. When industries that power the future all start competing for the same limited resource. When the quiet metal no one talked about becomes the metal everyone desperately needs. And that moment might be closer than most people think. The future is not built on wishful thinking. It is built on physics, engineering, and materials that obey the laws of the universe, whether we pay attention to them or not. When people talk about the future, they often imagine rockets landing on other planets' cities powered by clean energy, artificial intelligence, transforming industries, and electric vehicles replacing gasoline engines across the world. These ideas sound futuristic, but behind every breakthrough there is something very simple and very real. Every technological revolution depends on the materials that make it possible. You can design the most advanced system imaginable, but if the physical components cannot support that design, then the idea stays on paper. That is where silver becomes fascinating. It is not just a shiny metal sitting in coins or jewelry. It is the most efficient electrical conductor known to humanity. That is not speculation. That is a property defined by the laws of physics. When electricity needs to move with minimal resistance, silver does the job better than anything else. Now think about where the world is heading. Humanity is moving toward an electrified civilization. Energy systems are shifting from fossil fuels to renewable power. Machines are becoming more intelligent and more connected. Vehicles are transforming into computers on wheels. Entire cities are becoming digital ecosystems where everything communicates through sensors, processors, and networks. All of these systems require electricity to flow efficiently and reliably. When electricity becomes the backbone of civilization, the materials that move that electricity become incredibly important. Silver quietly sits at the center of this transformation because it allows electrical energy to travel with extraordinary efficiency. The more advanced our technology becomes, the more important efficiency becomes. Small improvements in conductivity translate into massive improvements when scaled across millions of devices, thousands of power stations, and global infrastructure. Solar energy is one of the clearest examples of this reality. When sunlight hits a solar panel, the goal is to convert that light into usable electricity with as little loss as possible. Every percentage of efficiency matters because it determines how much power can be generated from the same amount of sunlight. Silver plays a crucial role inside solar panels because it carries the electrical current produced by photovoltaic cells. Without that efficient pathway, the system loses performance. Now imagine the scale at which solar energy is expanding. Entire deserts are being transformed into solar power plants. Countries are investing billions into renewable energy infrastructure. Rooftops across cities are filling with solar panels as individuals and businesses adopt clean energy systems. Each panel requires silver to function effectively. When you multiply that requirement by millions and eventually hundreds of millions of panels, you start to see something remarkable. The quiet demand for silver begins to grow at a pace that most people never expected. The fascinating part about technological progress is that it compounds. One innovation creates the conditions for another. As renewable energy expands, it drives the development of better batteries, smarter power grids, and more advanced energy storage systems. Each of these technologies depends on highly conductive materials that ensure electricity flows smoothly through complex systems. The more the world electrifies, the more important it becomes to use materials that reduce resistance and energy loss, Silver sits at the very top of that hierarchy because its electrical conductivity surpasses all other metals. When engineers design systems that must perform under extreme efficiency requirements, they naturally turn toward the best possible conductor available. That decision is not about preference or tradition. It is about performance. The laws of physics quietly guide the architecture of the future. At the same time, another revolution is accelerating across the planet. Transportation is undergoing a transformation that will reshape industries, cities, and economies. The internal combustion engine dominated for more than a century, but a shift toward electric vehicles is happening at a pace that surprises even the most optimistic observers. Electric vehicles represent a completely different technological platform. Compared to traditional cars, they rely heavily on advanced electronics, high-performance batteries, and sophisticated power management systems. These components require efficient electrical pathways to function at peak performance. Silver appears again inside connectors, circuits, and control systems because it enables electricity to move quickly and reliably through the vehicle's architecture. When you step back and examine the scale of the automotive industry, the numbers become extraordinary. Tens of millions of vehicles are produced every year. Governments around the world are encouraging the transition toward electric mobility in order to reduce emissions and create cleaner urban environments. Manufacturers are investing enormous resources into research, development, and production capacity for electric vehicles. Companies like Tesla, Inc. helped accelerate this transformation by demonstrating that electric cars can be fast, desirable, and technologically superior to gasoline vehicles. Once that idea proved itself, the rest of the industry began moving in the same direction. Now nearly every major automaker is developing electric models, building battery factories, and preparing for a future where electricity powers transportation. Electric vehicles are essentially rolling networks of electronics. They contain sophisticated battery management systems, power converters, sensors, and computing hardware that coordinate every aspect of the vehicle's operation. Electricity flows constantly between components that must communicate and respond instantly. Efficiency and reliability become essential because these systems operate under high loads and demanding conditions. Silver plays an important role in maintaining that performance because it provides exceptional conductivity and durability. The more complex the electrical system becomes, the more valuable high-quality conductive materials become. Imagine a world where hundreds of millions of electric vehicles travel across highways, cities, and rural areas. Charging networks expand everywhere so drivers can power their cars quickly and conveniently. Energy flows from solar farms and wind turbines into massive battery storage facilities that stabilize the grid. Electricity becomes the lifeblood of transportation industry and everyday life. In that world, the materials that carry electrical energy become incredibly strategic resources. Silver quietly supports this entire ecosystem because it enables electricity to move with minimal resistance. Every improvement in conductivity helps reduce energy loss, improve performance, and increase system reliability. What makes this moment fascinating is that technological adoption rarely moves in a straight line. It often starts slowly while skeptics question whether the change will ever happen. Then suddenly momentum builds and the transformation accelerates faster than anyone expected. Electric vehicles are approaching that phase of rapid adoption. Battery costs continue to decline while performance improves. Charging infrastructure expands each year. Consumers begin to realize that electric cars offer instant torque, lower operating costs, and quieter driving experiences. As adoption increases, production scales up dramatically. Factories expand, supply chains grow, and new technologies emerge to support the ecosystem. When industries scale at that magnitude, they begin consuming enormous quantities of the materials required to build their products. Metals that once seemed abundant suddenly face increasing demand. Engineers search for ways to optimize designs while maintaining efficiency and reliability. Silver remains one of the most attractive materials for electrical applications because its performance characteristics are extremely difficult to replace. Alternatives exist, but they often sacrifice efficiency, durability, or long-term reliability. When systems must operate flawlessly for years under demanding conditions, engineers naturally choose materials that deliver the best results. This is where the intersection between technology and resources becomes fascinating. Humanity is building an electrified civilization powered by renewable energy, advanced electronics, and intelligent transportation. Each layer of this transformation depends on materials that enable electricity to move efficiently. Silver sits quietly inside solar panels, capturing sunlight and converting it into power. It appears inside electric vehicles, guiding energy through sophisticated control systems. It exists within countless electronic devices that connect the digital world to the physical one. As the scale of these technologies expands, the importance of the materials supporting them becomes impossible to ignore. The future people imagine with clean energy, intelligent machines, and electric mobility is not just a vision built on code and innovation. It is a vision grounded in physics, chemistry, and the elements that make modern technology possible. When people talk about resources, they often imagine that supply automatically adjusts to meet demand. It sounds logical at first. If the world needs more of something, companies will simply produce more of it. But the physical world is not software. You cannot rewrite it overnight. You cannot update it with a new version and instantly scale production. The Earth follows geological timelines that stretch millions of years into the past, and extracting materials from it requires patience, technology, capital, and time. Silver is one of those resources where the reality of supply is far more complicated than most people imagine. It is not simply a matter of digging deeper and finding endless quantities waiting underground. The process of discovering, permitting, financing, and building a mine can take more than a decade. By the time a new mine begins producing metal, the world around it may already have changed. The interesting part about silver production is that a large portion of it does not come from mines that were originally designed to produce silver alone. Much of the global supply actually appears as a byproduct of mining other metals like copper, lead, and zinc. That means the availability of silver is often linked to the demand for completely different industries. When companies mine copper, they may also extract small amounts of silver that happen to exist within the same geological deposits. But if copper demand slows or mining operations shift their focus, silver production can be affected even if the world suddenly needs more of it. This creates a fascinating imbalance where demand for silver can accelerate because of new technologies while supply remains tied to the economics of other metals. Now imagine what happens when industries built around electrification begin expanding at massive scale. Renewable energy projects multiply across continents. Electric vehicles move from being a niche innovation to a dominant form of transportation. Data centers expand to power artificial intelligence systems that require enormous computational capacity. Every layer of this technological transformation requires conductive materials that allow electricity to move efficiently. Silver sits quietly inside countless components that make these systems function. Yet the pipeline for producing new silver does not accelerate at the same speed as technological adoption. Geology does not respond to quarterly earnings reports. It responds to millions of years of planetary formation. New silver deposits are becoming harder to discover because many of the easily accessible resources have already been explored. Modern mining companies use advanced geological mapping, satellite data, and artificial intelligence to search for new deposits. But the reality is that large, high-quality discoveries are becoming rarer. When deposits are found, they often exist deeper underground or in regions where environmental and regulatory challenges make development more complex. Extracting metal from these locations requires significant investment and long timelines. Even after a discovery is confirmed, years of exploration drilling, feasibility studies, environmental assessments, and infrastructure development must take place before a single ounce of silver reaches the market. This creates a scenario where demand can grow rapidly, while supply responds slowly. The world might suddenly require more silver for solar panels, electric vehicles, and advanced electronics, yet the mining industry cannot instantly deliver new production to match that demand. Instead, there is a lag that stretches across years. During that period, industries compete for available supply, while engineers search for ways to optimize usage without sacrificing performance. It becomes a delicate balance between technological ambition and the physical limitations of the resources that support it. The fascinating thing about technological revolutions is that they often appear unstoppable once they gain momentum. Humanity has already decided that the future will be electrified. Renewable energy is expanding because it offers long-term sustainability and energy independence. Electric vehicles are gaining popularity because they combine performance with environmental benefits. Artificial intelligence systems are growing because they unlock capabilities that were impossible just a decade ago. Each of these trends reinforces the others, creating a feedback loop where innovation accelerates further innovation. Yet all of this progress depends on the materials that make electrical systems function efficiently. When people imagine the future, they usually focus on software, algorithms, and design. They picture advanced machines operating with seamless intelligence. But beneath that layer of digital sophistication lies a foundation of physical elements that carry energy through wires, circuits, and connectors. Silver is one of those elements that quietly enables the entire structure to work. It does not appear in headlines as often as breakthrough technologies, yet without it, many of those technologies would struggle to operate at peak efficiency. The scarcity of such a material becomes significant when the systems that depend on it expand globally. At the same time, there is another powerful force that shapes markets and technological transitions. That force is human perception. For years, silver has existed in the shadow of other assets that captured global attention. Investors talked about digital currencies transforming finance. They watched technology companies reshape entire industries. They focused on artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and space exploration. Metals like gold often received attention as stores of value during economic uncertainty. Silver remained relatively quiet in comparison, even though it was deeply embedded inside the technologies powering the modern world. Human attention has an interesting pattern. It tends to focus intensely on certain ideas while overlooking others that may be equally important. Then something changes. A realization spreads across industries, and investors begin connecting pieces of information that were previously scattered. Suddenly, the narrative shifts. People start asking new questions about resources that support technological progress. They begin examining supply chains, production capacity, and long-term availability of critical materials. When that moment of awareness arrives, it can move quickly because information travels instantly across global networks. Imagine a scenario where industries begin acknowledging how essential silver has become for renewable energy, advanced electronics, and electrified transportation. Manufacturers start securing long-term supply agreements to ensure they can continue building the products that define the future. Investors analyze the relationship between growing technological demand and the slower pace of mining expansion. Governments evaluate strategic resources that influence energy independence and industrial competitiveness. Each of these groups approaches the issue from a different perspective, yet they are all responding to the same underlying reality. Markets are not purely mathematical systems driven by supply and demand curves. They are also shaped by psychology. The collective awareness of millions of participants can shift dramatically when new insights emerge. Once people recognize that a particular resource sits at the intersection of multiple technological revolutions, their perception of its importance changes. Capital begins to flow toward industries that produce or secure that resource. Research intensifies as engineers explore ways to maximize efficiency while maintaining performance. Conversations that once seemed niche suddenly become central to discussions about the future of energy and technology. This transformation in perception can be powerful because it aligns awareness with reality. Silver has always possessed extraordinary physical properties that make it valuable for electrical systems. The difference now is that the scale of technologies requiring those properties is expanding rapidly. Solar energy networks, electric vehicles, high-performance electronics, and intelligent infrastructure all depend on efficient conductivity. When the world begins to see how these systems connect, the role of silver becomes impossible to ignore. There is something inspiring about moments when humanity collectively recognizes the importance of a resource that quietly supports progress. It reminds us that innovation is not only about new ideas, but also about understanding the fundamental building blocks that allow those ideas to become real. Every breakthrough in engineering ultimately relies on elements from the periodic table that obey the laws of physics. Silver happens to be one of those elements whose properties align perfectly with the needs of an electrified civilization. When technological vision meets the reality of finite resources, it creates an opportunity for deeper awareness. Engineers think more creatively about how to design systems that maximize efficiency. Industries collaborate to build supply chains capable of supporting rapid innovation. Investors look beyond short-term trends and begin examining the materials that underpin the entire technological ecosystem. In that environment, silver transforms from a quiet commodity into a symbol of how the physical world enables humanity's most ambitious dreams. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, it becomes clear that the future is not just about bold ideas, powerful software, or ambitious visions of what humanity can achieve. The future is built on real things that come from the ground, elements that have existed for billions of years, waiting for us to discover how powerful they truly are. Silver is one of those elements. For a low develops time it has quietly supported civilization, moving electricity through circuits, enabling technologies to function, and helping engineers push the boundaries of what machines can do. But now the world is entering a phase where electricity becomes the foundation of almost everything we build. Energy systems are transforming, transportation is becoming electric, and intelligent machines are connecting every corner of the planet. In that environment, the materials that carry energy efficiently become incredibly important. What makes this moment fascinating is that the shift is happening in real time. Solar energy continues expanding across continents. Electric vehicles are moving from early adoption into global mass production. Artificial intelligence, robotics, and advanced electronics are scaling faster than most people imagined possible. All of these systems share one common requirement. They depend on efficient electrical pathways to function reliably at scale. Silver sits at the center of that requirement because its physical properties make it uniquely capable of conducting electricity with extraordinary efficiency. When the world builds technologies that rely on electricity, the value of the materials supporting that flow becomes impossible to ignore. History has shown that technological revolutions often bring unexpected shifts in the importance of certain resources. Materials that once seemed ordinary suddenly become strategic because they enable the next stage of human progress. When industries, investors, and governments begin to recognize this connection, attention changes quickly. Conversations evolve from seeing a metal as just another commodity to understanding how deeply it is woven into the architecture of the future. Silver represents that kind of shift because it is not only a store of value, but also a critical component inside the systems that will power the next era of innovation. The most exciting part of all this is the reminder that progress happens when people connect vision with reality. Engineers imagine new possibilities. Entrepreneurs build technologies that reshape industries, and societies move towards solutions that improve life on Earth. But behind every innovation, there are elements and materials that make those breakthroughs possible. Recognizing their importance is part of understanding how the future truly works. Silver may have been underestimated for years, but as the world accelerates toward an electrified civilization, its role becomes clearer and more powerful. The unthinkable moment is not just about a market shift or a sudden change in attention. It is about awareness. It is the moment when people realize that the technologies shaping tomorrow are deeply connected to the resources that support them today. Once that realization spreads, the conversation about silver changes forever, because it is no longer just a metal. It becomes part of the story of how humanity powers its future. Thank you for watching and being part of this journey of discovery and possibility.